Today, I have Erin King on the podcast. Friends, I am in love. When you start girl crushing somebody before you meet them, and the more you find out about them, the more you love them, and then you meet them in your house, and you're like, we're besties.
It's so fun. Thank you for having me, Jen.
It's awesome because our energy is our vibe. And you speak about this all over the place.
Yeah.
And it's so true. Like there's people that recharge us.
I think we're living in a time right now where everything is a little bit artificial. We got artificial intelligence, filters, fake news. The thing about energy is it never lies. Right. It's the ultimate truth teller.
Yeah.
Just us the last 30 minutes vibing. You can't fake that exchange. Talking about energy is a really important topic right now.
No, it's really important. And all of you, you wish you could have paid a ticket to be behind the scenes for the last 30, because we've had the best time ever. So,
Fun.
okay, but the energy exam is brand new. Like you just created it. It's just launched. So tell us a little bit about the history of it and why.
It launched yesterday. Thank you for bringing it up. The energy exam. Most people have taken a personality test. You know, your strengths finder, your Enneagram, Myers-Briggs, whatever. And so this isn't really about who you are. It's more about the type of energy that you emit and how the world perceives it, how they vibe off of how you show up. It's also about understanding that how we power up is as distinct as our DNA. We have extroverts and introverts, but 70% of us are ambivert.
Really?
Tell me, sometimes I want to be with people, sometimes I don't. And so the energy exam helps you to uncover your unique chargers and drainers for your energy type. So it was really interesting in our research. We had this whole year we spent with these super smart PhDs, and we interviewed thousands of people all over the country about how they source, spend, and save their personal energy. We learned all kinds of things. And one of them, which was one of my favorite ones, was that we are not really our age, we're our energy.
Right.
And what I mean by that is like, so people think, okay, you got boomers and you have your Z, and we're all so different, generation. And yes, okay, people that want to text instead of talk are not my people. I get that, right? It's a younger generation thing. I'm 42. And everyone on my team that's under 30, they would rather do anything, messenger pigeon, than pick up the phone and talk to me. They want to text and type. What's interesting about this study, what we found was that people, what energized them, the variance in those energizing activities like hiking, walking, calling a friend, coffee, whatever, the variance was actually not that different age group to age group. So boomers weren't that different from Gen Z in terms of what energized them. But when we sorted the same group of these thousands and thousands of people by their energy type, so there's 5 that we discovered. When you sort by the types, the differences were outrageous, like huge variations. So it's not really when you're thinking about leading your team or even jiving with a new friend or even in your family, right? Like you're CEO of 7, right?
Right.
So even when you're looking at, gosh, how do I figure out how to galvanize my crew? How do I garner buy-in? How do I really get that influence going? How do I get yes from either a child or a CEO or an investor or a buyer or a customer? It's really important to understand what actually energizes them and makes them want to say yes to you. It's more their energy type. It's really interesting to dive into the nuances there.
Now that you've done this exam, you've identified these 5 different energy types. Are you able to identify in others what energy type they are without them taking the exam?
So if I brag about it, like if I'm like, oh, Jen, I totally know what you are, then I'll get it wrong. But if I just do it, it's pretty right. It's kind of a party trick, right? But I think, what's interesting about the different energy types is that you're able to really understand that if your vibe is not jiving with someone else, I think particularly as women, we tend to be sort of judgy on ourselves with something I said or did. Why don't they like me? Or why don't I feel like we're jamming? Or why is there so much resistance from this team member? Whatever the rub is, I think we can tend to look inward and be hard on ourselves, when in reality, some energetic types just vibe or they don't. And that's okay. You don't have to be, my Nana, who's 90 from Ireland, always says, it's better to be someone's shot of whiskey than everyone's cup of tea.
Amen, sister. We love Nana.
Right. Yeah, the Nana knows best, and it's true.
Right. Okay, so when I took the exam, I realized that I was kinetic. Okay,
Yes.
which I kind of figured when I was reading the different types. But will you walk us through the 5 different energy personalities or types that you have identified?
Yes, I will. Quick backstory on why these personality types sort of came to be and
Yeah,
why I
because you
think
didn't
they're
go. Sam kind of revealed them as you guys were doing all your research.
So why would someone want to spend an entire year of their life with PhD scientists that are 8,000 times smarter than them? I'll tell you why. A couple years ago when the pandemic happened, I had what I like to call my drainy season. It was just drainer after drainer after drainer. We've all had that time. We were kind of alluding to yours with your accident and with all the
And all
kids
the
and
stuff.
some of those are blessings in disguise and not all drainers, but sometimes life just comes for you. So for me, this was back during the pandemic. I'm a keynote speaker, so all of my income is from live events. So obviously, those were not very popular. On top of that, my husband had gone all in on this huge investment. It was basically almost all of our savings. That investment, when the pandemic hit and the stock market was crazy, just went south. So we lost almost all of our savings overnight. On top of that, I live in California and here in Park City now, near you. But back in California, my family's on the East Coast. So my friends in California, my two very best friends, are really more of my family. Like they were, spin class, brunch, Thanksgiving, birthday. Like they were my trifecta, the three of us. And they were really my rock. Both of them moved within like 2 months of each other to North Carolina and Texas.
Those jerks.
Totally.
Yes.
So it's like, okay, pandemic is happening. My company is basically making $0. We lost all of our savings. My besties moved. So we did what a lot of people do during a pandemic, and we got this little puppy. And her name was Stevie Nicks, and she was the love of my life.
Her name was.
And so she started going with me to everything that the trifecta did. Like I took her for walks, and she was on my Zoom calls and slept in my bed. And I sort of started to feel a little bit better about life. And then one day, which was the worst day of my life, I'm sorry, we were walking back from the grocery store, and this car just came out of nowhere. One of those moments in life where your life was one way before that moment, and you're never the same after.
Line in the sand.
Exactly. So I spiraled into this I'm a high energy gal, and I literally had the darkest, I was anxious, I was depressed, I was eating, I was drinking, I was having night terrors. It was terrible. I gained 1,000,000 pounds. I had puffy eyes, wine eyes. It was awful. So my family was really worried about me. So they came out to California, and I'm kind of getting cheered up by all of them, which, by the way, this is a really big deal that they came to California.
So if you read her book, you understand that she's one of us that was the black sheep that left the family.
Yes, exactly.
Right? They're like, why would you leave this vortex? It's beautiful. I'm like, have you seen the beaches in California?
Exactly.
Just letting you know. Have you seen the mountains in Park City, friends? There's a reason. It's not that I don't love you. It's that I love me and you.
Totally. It's so true. And my family, to your point, they're like, gosh, California has mudslides and fires and all these, my dad's like, all these hippies are out there. They just did not like. So for them to show up, I was like, oh shoot, I'm really in trouble. So they're cheering me up. My family is surrounding me with love. I'm starting to find my anchor again. And I realized that my dad, I'm talking to him and his head's kind of shaking a little bit. My dad and I are very close, and he was an athlete his whole life, Georgetown football quarterback, up at 5 a.m., working out, super stud. And I'm looking at him like, Dad, why is your head shaking? He's a boomer, so he's allergic to like excuses, illness, weakness. He's like, nothing, I'm fine. Well, 2 glasses of wine later, in vino veritas, I find out that my dad was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease.
What?
Yes. So all of this stuff is happening, right, Jen? It's just like and it's all within like 90 days. And if you've ever gotten, like people say when it rains, it pours. That was my drainy season. It was just hitting me. So I don't know how you respond when the world is just coming at you. But for me, my default, when my energy is being drained out of the bone marrow of my soul, is I just don't want to deal with anything. So I just go to work. If I can just keep with meetings and busy, I'll be fine. So I was saying yes to keynotes on AI, sales, leadership, personal development, success, all these different things. 1 week, I just wanted to work, because if I could work, I could control that.
Right,
If
but I
just
think
keep
you did
moving.
like 5 keynotes in 5 days,
I
right?
ended up in the hospital.
Yeah.
So I woke up in the ER. I was on a call with my team, and I'm like, I can't breathe. I woke up in the ER, and I thought they were going to say that I had a heart attack, but it was just a good old-fashioned panic attack. And it was terrifying. And so it was sort of this crossroads moment, right? So then I had this keynote in Bali a couple weeks later, and the doctor's like, listen, no more powering through. You need to power down. You need to recharge because your somatic signals are screaming at you. And if you try to shush the signals, they just get louder. I was in Bali doing this women's retreat, and Bali is a very spiritual place. I don't know if you've been there before.
Yes.
But, you're tingling with the vibe of the connectedness of that space, right? So I'm like, oh my God, I'm totally with Gilbert, like eat, pray, love. This is my moment. So I tacked on 10 days after this keynote to just like what is life? Just take a minute. My husband's like,
Ooh.
can I come? I'm like, no. So
Protect yourself and lean in.
totally. So, I'm down by this sacred river with the great-grandson of a mystical shaman, and I'm juicing and yoga and massages, and all of a sudden I'm like, I think I'm healed. I think I feel better. Like many of us, you get back from vacation, and it lasts for like 2 seconds. For 3 days, I was like Bali Erin. I'm burning incense, meditating, yoga, and then a week later, I don't have time to do all this. I'm exhausted. Like, I got shit to do. I got to get motivated. I mean, I can't stay zen. And then a month later, Jen, I'm in another call and I started having my breathing issue and my heart started racing. I realized I'm in an intersection here. This is a life or death intersection. I have got to break this cycle. I can't just keep powering through till you can't anymore physically. And you can't power down forever because you can't afford to fiscally. So what is the answer here? Like, can I be both high performing, but also like high enjoying? Can I, or am I always putting points on the board, selling my company, raising 7 figures from investors? I have a big entrepreneurial career. I've done all these different jobs and companies. One of them did really well. And it's like, whenever I was crushing it, I was not present. I was not joyful. I couldn't sleep. I hated my life. There's a photo of me on Instagram doing my big Barnes & Noble book signing. And I had dreamed about that my entire life since I was a little girl. And there's this big line. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm totally Carrie Bradshaw. This is so amazing. I was dead inside because I was so stressed out. I didn't even enjoy that precious moment. That you miss these moments in pursuit of success. Or on the other hand, I'll go the other extreme and I'll be like, okay, it's girls' weekend. It's yoga, it's spa, my phone is off. And I'll start to feel that joy, that abundance, that aliveness, that alignment. But my email inbox is exploding. My
You can't
team's
live
like,
there, right?
yes. So I commissioned this huge research study and paused my whole life for an entire
What
year.
gave you the courage to commission the research study, though?
I actually also went to the hospital when I was 31 for the same issue when I was running my agency Socialite, when our investors pulled out and I couldn't make payroll. So this wasn't the first time. It was once in my 30s, once in my 40s. I'm like, well, if I go again in my 50s, I ain't coming out. I'm not going to make it. So it was a really expensive, exhausting, scary endeavor. I turned down a lot of money. We modified our lifestyle. I spent a ton of time in the world of science, which is not my natural forte. I'm an English major. I'm a writer. I love language and creativity. Science and data really intimidates me. So it was really a big, bold, scary, juicy, audacious move. But fast forward to today, and what I learned from this study, particularly studying so one of the groups that we found in interviewing all these people with understanding the 5 energy types was there was this one group that had 2 elements that were particularly fascinating for me. One was that they reported having consistently high energy levels. So think about your battery level, like 1 to 7. 5 to 7 is higher energy, ready to rock, ready to climb mountains, ready to change the world. 1 to 4 is kind of that lower energy. That's more survive mode. 5 to 7 is more thrive mode. So we looked at this one group that consistently reported energy scores in the 5 to 7 range over a long period of time. The second area that they really shone was what we called the life satisfaction score. Your life satisfaction score were things like, how excited are you for the future? Do you feel successful? Do you feel present with your family? Are you joyful? Basically, like, what's your stoke level, right? And so they had both high satisfaction levels, even when life had drainy seasons. We would ask them, hey, what about your last trauma, your last loss, your last grief? Were you able to still find joy? And they were. So we studied that to understand what they were able to do to be both high energy and high enjoyment. What we found was really fascinating. They didn't use language around powering through, like hang in there, hustle culture. They didn't also use language about powering down. They weren't really recalibrate, recharge people. They used a lot of language around powering up, but not powering up in a wellness overwhelmed way. Powering up in a way that was really personal to them, like at their core. They used language like play to my strengths, know my limits, in tune with my body. They were just radically self-aware about how their personal battery worked. And what was really encouraging for me that I've applied in my own life, and what I learned from this group, we call them the big energy beings, the babes, big energy beings. What I learned from these babes has changed the way that I run my company, my business. My Whoop scores are in the green. Thank God, knock on wood, we've had our best year ever. It just has been attracting so much pull, not that push. It has changed my life and lives of my clients. And the biggest thing that's so exciting is we found that it's not about doing more. The average number of activities these big energy beings do per week to stay energized is 32. So about 4 to 6 a day. That's a walk, calling a friend, breathing, having a moment, meeting someone new, contenting, creating, whatever lights you up. 32 is the average to feel like your battery's at that 5 to 7 range. When they went above 32 activities, their battery not only went down, they slipped down into the 1 to 4 range, but also their life satisfaction score went down. They had lower energy and lower happiness when they were doing more. So the beautiful headline is it's not about doing more of the more, it's about knowing your. And that's why these 5 types are so key. It's basically a scientific shortcut to your personal power source. For you, you're kinetic.
I'm kinetic.
You're kinetic.
Yes.
So kinetics are all about the more they're in motion, the more energy they get. So there's something we have in the energy exam. You can understand where you fall on the power grid. The power grid are the sources and spaces of where we get energy. Your spaces of energy are at the top. Physical, mental, creative, spiritual, social. Some people kind of know, like you're like, I kind of knew what I was going to be. On the left side of the grid, picture, these are your 3 key sources of energy. Okay. Now, these are a little more misunderstood. I certainly did not know anything about this until we did this study. The 3 sources of energy are your sense of control. So a sense of agency or autonomy, driving your own ship, having some say in your destiny is a huge indicator that if you're lacking a sense of control in your everyday, that's when you have that low battery, even if you do the duh, right? Diet, unwind, hydrate, I call it the duh. You got 8 hours of sleep, you drank your water, you ate your kale, got your sweat, got your steps, and you're still like, why am I still drained? I did all the right things. It's probably because you're missing one of these sources, right? So one of them is control. The second one is a sense of competence. So competence is defined as, you're doing something that's challenging, but it's doable. Challenging but doable, and you get like immediate feedback in some way. So there's some kind of understanding that, hey, I'm doing a thing, right? So we feel like we're working our butts off and we're not getting any feedback that's positive, or we feel like we're taking something on where it's so challenging that like, we literally can't do it.
We get lost in the middle of it. Right.
Yeah, when you don't feel confident, your battery goes down. And then the third one, and this is a really big one, this is why everyone was losing their minds during the pandemic, except for my husband, who is a crazy introvert, is a sense of connection. So deep connection with others or something bigger than ourselves. This power grid has control, connection, and competence on the left, and then your spaces are at the top. The 5 energy types land in different places on this grid. So your kinetic, for example, you land in the space of physical, and then there's 2 sources of physical for you. So it's a sense of control and competence. Hence why you are a world record holder and have climbed mountains.
Yeah.
That's what energizes you.
When I moved to Park City, I learned how to ski. I wasn't a big skier beforehand. I would get bored on the bunny hills. I would go to the harder hills. But then when I started getting frustrated, I'd go back to the bunny hill to have control and know what I'm doing so that I was recharged to go harder. I couldn't just keep going harder and harder. I had to kind of come back, remind myself, like, here's what I'm capable of. I am better than what I started. And then I could push forward. So it's kind of a cha-cha. A couple steps forward, a couple steps back, a couple steps forward.
Challenging but doable. Good job. I can do this. And so that would energize you to have the courage to keep leveling up, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So if anyone is listening, takes the energy exam. If you're a kinetic,
it's free. It's online. You're going to learn a ton about yourself. So do it. And make the people in your household take it too.
Yeah.
Because it's so fun.
Okay, but fun. Yes. But so if you're like Jen, you are like, so I'm also kinetic. So, so if we are not, everyone has to move their bodies. Everyone needs to work out, sweat, and get steps. But for kinetics, it's literally like you're jumping. My husband calls it the wiggles. When you don't get your movement, you go nuts. And you're also drained. So if you're kinetic, that's for you. There's 4 other types. I'll just do the super high level sweep. Y'all will take it. It goes deep on the report, so you'll get all your details. But the other 4 are synergistic, which gets charged by connection with others. So if you're synergistic and someone's like, hey, go for a walk to get energy at 3 o'clock. Well, your walk is talking to someone on your earbuds and having the big chat, or connecting to what's spiritual for you. So connecting in a way of listening to meditation, listening to one of your favorite gurus, praying, anything that connects you to others or something bigger than yourself, that's gonna fill your cup a lot faster than anything else. If you're a generative, you are charged by creativity. So if you're in a job or at home where there's too much like routine and just do the thing and color in the lines, you can literally eat kale till the cows come home and you are still gonna feel drained. The other one is rigorous. So rigorous is, those are our chaos process, or allergic to chaos.
Okay.
They love repetition. Their phrase is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So if you have someone in your family or on your team giving you grief, everything you say is bugging them, they're cranky, they're just off. It's probably because there's too much chaos in their world. They need something to organize like yesterday, and then they'll be more energized, right? The last one is responsive. So my secondary is responsive. Okay. So there's two. Responsives, we're the deep feelers, we're the empaths. So for us, our battery gets drained by too much access to us. So for us, our charger is like boundaries and process time. And, our power grid lies in a sense of control over our emotions. Emotion is the space, control is the source. So a lot of us, we really need to do the personal development. We need to read the self-help books. We need quiet time. We need to be alone. We need to go to Bali for 10 days, find themselves out their husband. So there's all these different ways. Knowing your energy type can help you to be more intentional, not about trying every single thing that Instagram is throwing at us with the red light and the cold plunging and the sauna. If you have time, more power to you. I love that for you, as the kids say. If you don't have time to do all the things, this power grid helped me for sure to understand, like, I'm kinetic responsive. If I have not moved my body and if I have not had time to process my feelings, I'm gonna be a nightmare for my clients, my family, my friends. I'm just not gonna be my best version. I don't have to do all of it, but I do have to tackle the two that are the fastest charge for my personal battery. So it's kind of a nice little shortcut.
No, definitely. And when you recognize what your shortcuts are, I know after I took the exam, I started paying more attention to environments I was in and things I was doing. Am I feeling better afterwards or worse afterwards?
Yeah.
Being aware of that allows you to build your life to support you.
Totally.
Because you're responsible for you.
And the beautiful thing is you don't have to make massive changes to feel a renewed sense of vitality. One of my favorite phrases is a reality of vitality happens by choice and not by chance. You choose to have this reality of vitality. One of my business partners is Moira Kusaba, and she's my co-founder of the Energy Institute, this online community that we're launching in a couple of months. She's a kinetic like you. And she was feeling super drained. She's not a caffeine gal. She doesn't, she eats super clean. And she's like, why am I having these slumps during the day? Well, took the energy exam and was like, where else can I facilitate a sense of competence and control in the physical realm? I'm already working out. I'm already doing all the things. What else can I do? For her, it was as simple as she started working at a stand-up desk.
Isn't that funny?
And she's like, Erin, it sounds so dumb that it's like, really? She goes, it was a game changer. I didn't have the dips in energy. My client calls it too. I wasn't cranky. I needed to stay in motion. It was just like standing, you know what I mean? So it really does work.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I love it. Okay, and you go into companies and you help companies look at these exams for their team so they can figure out, okay, how do I energetically work with my team? Because energy management, you say, is so much more than time management.
Yeah.
And I love that statement.
Yeah.
And just helping people realize, like, here's who I am. Here's what we need to get done. How do we work together to make this piece happen? And energy is a huge component for that to come together.
Well said. I agree. One of the things with the companies that's been really interesting is in our space where we kind of play, Jen, we talk about energy as if it's the most real currency that exists.
Right.
It's the currency with which we transact with the world.
Right.
We know this. But when you go into these higher echelons of performance and corporate legacy companies where there's a lot of masculine energy left over from generations of the stale male pails calling the shots, there's still this feeling that energy is this like woo-woo, new agey, yogi thing. One of my goals with undergoing the research was how can we understand how real energy actually is, not just a feeling like aligned and abundant and alive, which are great, but to your point, sort of this more hard deliverable. And what we found was really fascinating. We found that we asked all these people from all over the country, think of a leader that you know, someone that you look up to that you respect. What do you think is the number one quality that inspires you to get on board with them, to follow them, to buy from them, to work for them? What is it? And we gave them a list of like 20 options. Is it their education? They went to Harvard. Is it their skill set? They're really good at programming. Is it their creativity? Is it their moral compass? Are they just a good person? Do they just work more hours than everyone else? We gave like all these options. And the number one response was a leader's vibe or way of being. Yeah. So energy is no longer this woo-woo nicety. It is the number one workplace necessity when it comes to peak performance. That's the reality.
Well, and I think the more that we become aware of it, we walk into places and we know, right? You can walk into a store and be like, oh, this is my store because I feel the energy in it. Or you can walk into and be like, oh, this isn't. And so I think even with society is how we're moving, we're unconsciously aware of it. And now we're making it consciously aware, because when we're consciously aware, we can make change.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, exactly. So well said. And I think as a podcast host, you talk to all different guests, right? I have a crazy high energy level. I don't drink caffeine. I know I can talk fast, but my mom and my grandmother are even worse. I'm just programmed to be a nut. So I understand that when I talk about energy, the biggest thing is I'm not saying that anyone needs to match or mimic my energy. It's about digging deep on your essence, your version of fully charged you. So you meet different guests in your podcast, and I'm sure sometimes, like I'm a host as well, some guests you walk away and you're like, let's go kick ass. And other guests you walk away and you're like, well, they were really nice, but I kind of feel tired. Some people energize you and exhaust you. It's all good. A different host might have found that particular delivery style to be very energizing, right? Our research found that we all have different baseline energy levels. So kinetics, for example, just have a higher natural baseline than the rest of the types. The lowest energy level is responsive because they're processing so much emotion, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes they're just like, I'm tired. I need a minute. The beautiful thing about understanding it is not only are the different levels, but different types. Someone might be fully charged, a rigorous person working in accounting, at their job, and this might be best version them. And as leaders and managers and in companies, we have to understand and honor that and approach it with empathy. That high energy is not just Jenn or Erin. There's other versions of high energy, right? So I think one of the biggest headlines that a lot of the companies we work with are going crazy about is we all know energy is contagious. We hear this.
Yes.
But in our study, we wanted to find out, well, like how contagious is it exactly? And what we found was that 68%, okay, so like almost 70%, like real good chunk of people in the study, they found that when they moved from a low level of energy, so people that were at like a 1 to 4, when they spent time with someone whose energy they quote unquote admired, they moved up. 68% moved from low energy to that 5 to 7, that high energy, just by being around someone whose energy they admired. So that's a really powerful number, because as leaders and as whether you're an influencer, a creator, you're running, your CEO of your house, whatever, if you're stuck with low vibe around you, the fastest way to raise the energy around you is raising the energy within you.
So the interesting thing after taking this exam for me, I gave a speech yesterday. It was amazing because here's the thing, it was a 2-hour drive and I was dreading that drive because that can drain me and it makes it harder for me to get on the stage and be excited and do all those things. When I was looking at your book and reading the different things, I'm like, you know what? I'm responsible for my energy. What makes me excited? I read this in your book about Judy Holler and about Post-it notes. And about it not just being a to-do list, but how you want to feel list. Yeah. I had some Post-it notes in my car to remind me of how I wanted to show up, how I wanted to feel. Yeah. I built a playlist before I went into the speech so that I could get myself hyped up. Yeah. Once I'm up there, the energy exchange just goes, right? But when you first go up there, you need to bring it. I was responsible for bringing it, responsible for knowing what I needed, and this helped.
Amazing. Well, first of all, I'm sure you burnt the place to the ground because your low energy is probably some people's highest energy. So I'm sure you smashed it. I love that you got that two-way from the audience because sometimes we are the generators. I do talks for insurance, commercial real estate game. There's no shame in some of the finance games. And because they do heavy, hard work, the vibe of these cultures can be a little bit low. And sometimes you do have to be the generator start to finish, whether you're on stage as a speaker or even if you're just in your role and doing a Zoom call, you're leading a meeting, you got a presentation, you're just showing up on social media. Like the way that we are responsible for going into every room, whether that room is a stage or a beautiful living room like your living room, or it's a meeting, every time you are entering into these exchanges, these interactions, you are deeply responsible because you are not gonna control how anyone responds to you, what value they're gonna bring, what kind of terrible morning they had or terrible childhood or to make them act rude to you, that is completely out of your control. And the big energy beings in our study, we asked them like, hey, tell us about what you do when things aren't going great. Your meeting's going south, you're bombing the pitch, maybe you're not killing it on stage, maybe your kids are driving you crazy, whatever. How do you deal with these drainers in your life? And the language that they used was unbelievable. They used language that was so radically, deeply responsible. They had accountability that was activated at a level that was bigger than the average bear. People that had lower energy didn't talk about this kind of accountability. They had more finger pointing language. Like, well, everyone's gonna be a jerk sometimes, or you know how they are. It's kind of almost like I hate to use this phrase, but like victim energy, a little bit happening to me energy. They did not use language like, I own my piece. I turn the mirror around. I know that it's up to me. I know they're vibing off of me. I bring what I can. I release the rest. This is the language they were using. And so if you want to be someone who's high performing and high enjoying, it starts with radical accountability for the energy we bring, no matter if you're having a crappy morning. I'm with you. Driving drains me too. I had to drive to Salt Lake City yesterday for a TV interview. It was only like an hour. It's so close, like 40 minutes. But I get so windshield time, the concentrating.
Where am I going to park? Am I going to get there in
Yes.
time? Am I going to be hot when I walk from here to there? My makeup's going to come off. Those
Totally.
thoughts all consume me, and I need, yeah, totally.
Hey, I had the exact same experience yesterday where I wasn't smart enough to do the post-it notes, I should have, but I got to the TV studio and I'm doing a segment on energy, and girl, my battery is in the red. I am like, okay, I got cut off. People are driving crazy. I'm a Nana driver in the right lane. Everyone's freaking me out. So I had this low, I went into the bathroom, and it was this moment of like, you are here to serve whoever's on the other side of that camera. It doesn't matter if you're tired, if your in-laws were here for a week and left yesterday. It doesn't matter. Insert your version of your why you're drained. Doesn't matter. At the end of the day, we are responsible for the energy that we bring. And when you take it as a radical responsibility that is standing in service of anyone, and you could have an impact, one person, any kind of impact, it's a fun way to flip that switch like you did for your talk and summon that best version of you. Grab that sneaky gear, pull that lever that you think you don't have, because you do.
You do.
It's in there.
Now, earlier in this conversation, you whipped through the DUH acronym. So I want to bring that back because
Yeah.
I think it needs a little more, because I think it's so important. So walk us through the DUH.
Well, so when you talk about energy, there's a lot of conversations around energy that are in 3 categories, right? My co-founder of the Energy Institute, which we're launching in a couple months, my friend Moira, is fabulous at this. We call it like 101, 201, and 301, energy management. A lot of times energy conversations are around the 101 or the 301. 101 is energy at the DUH level. DUH level is your diet, D, unwind, getting your sleep, U. And then H is hydrate, getting the water in, right? Drinking your gallons and gallons. If you're not eating clean, sleeping well, drinking water, or moving your body, you're gonna have terrible energy. Duh, we know this, right? But most conversations on energy kind of stop there. But the reality is that 48% of Americans who get 7 to 8 hours of sleep report still feeling fatigued. So there's other levels to this we wanna unpack. Now, I'm not saying the duh is easy, okay? We had like contractors in our house and my in-laws. I had actually not worked out for 3 days and I'm jumping out of my skin. I can feel my energy is off. Kinetic like you, I get that sweat to be able to serve. And it's like, it's not that duh is easy. The basics are hard to do consistently at a high standard. Otherwise, the wellness industry wouldn't be a multi-billion-dollar industry. Super hard to eat kale and not the burger, I get it. And there's these 2 other levels of energy management that we're really talking about with the energy exam in my future book and today's conversation. So the 301, if we skip 201, is the other conversation on energy people have. The conversation on energy we have there is that vibrational manifestation, sort of the more plugging into the source, whatever you want to call it. And I think both those conversations happen a lot on social media.
I think Gabby Bernstein, right?
Yes.
And then I think like Dave Asprey and those guys on the other end.
100%, right. And those are beautiful, important conversations.
Totally.
Love them, tune into them. I love Gabby. I subscribe to all of them. I'm like, tell me more how I can not be middle-aged. Like, give me all the things. But so I think the missing chunk is this 201. So my friend Moira kind of tackles the 101 and the 301, but I'm really more in this like 201 category. We're kind of sandwiched between the duh and the vibrational. And that 201 category is really about energetic alignment at the decision-making level. This is about looking at the people, projects, places, and pivots that are either draining your battery or energizing you. You're being charged or drained with every decision you're making. My hope is that when your listeners take the energy exam, if they look at the full report there's like 30 pages all around the environments and the people, the relationships that are charging you or draining you. And there's even a key about which energy types are most compatible with each other and which ones aren't. It's kind of a nice little shortcut where you can be like, oh, this is why we're not jamming. It's not anyone's fault. One way you can manage them better, lead them better, even get along with them better, have more harmony in their life, is to understand that what is charging Kyle maybe isn't charging Jenn or Erin. So as a team member, if Kyle is salty one day, it's like, oh, Kyle's maybe a rigorous. He wants to sit down and organize it a little bit better. Obviously, you're very organized. For example, let's say you have someone on your team that is like maybe Kyle's synergistic. They thrive on connection. Maybe if Kyle's working too much alone behind the camera, that's maybe why he's feeling salty. He needs to plug back into the bigger mission behind what you're doing with your company. He needs to jam with one of his buddies when they're doing the edits and not be solo cholo isolated, because that's how his battery is charged. So as a leader, as a CEO, as CEO of your house, CEO of 3, CEO of like my company, whatever, it's really cool to say, hey, energetic leadership and getting that buy-in and getting the most out of your people, where not only are they more productive, but they're just happier. They're just more fun to be around. That makes everything better.
Right. Well, we're all operating in our sweet spot, identifying what gets us to that sweet spot. And then also asking, using our voice to say, hey, guess what? I love being a part of this project. This is how I work. Can we sit down and have a meeting so that I can organize these pieces and feel connected to my energy?
Yeah, totally. And exactly. I've always heard that advice. For me, sometimes I have a hard time because I operate in a pretty unique way. When people say put yourself in their shoes, sometimes I have a hard time doing that because I can be a little bit of a tough cookie. I think that's how I was raised. My dad used to always say, when the going gets tough, the tough get going.
Oh yeah,
so even
we all
like,
knew that.
Right.
You grew up in the 80s, that's your statement. Yes.
Rub some dirt on it and shut up, right?
Yes.
Dad, even like battling Parkinson's, like I'll be like, Dad, how are you feeling? He's like, I'm good. I feel great. And thank God he is doing great right now. He's working out 3 hours a day. He's also eating super clean. He's cut the whiskey back. Like he's like on a mission, so he is controlling the controllables. I think what's interesting is if you're someone like me or my dad, where it is hard for you to kind of put yourself in their shoes, this is a beautiful way to understand energetic empathy, to understand what powers them up without having to figure it out, because there's so many things that could be wrong. As a leader and a manager of my team, one of the gals on my team is a generative, and that's all about creativity. So Ashley, if you're listening, you know that you're generative. If she's not giving her best to one of our initiatives, I know she's generative. So am I giving her enough competency over creativity? Or am I downloading too much exactly how to do it where she needs more space? She needs more of a blank canvas. As a leader, it's a quick shortcut where I know I'm telling her exactly, I'm micromanaging this. She needs a blank canvas and a paint set. How can I reframe this initiative so that she can really drive and be the creator of how it shows up artistically or creatively? The minute I make that shift, it's like she's whistling, she's happy, she's back. So it's kind of a nice way to make it a little easier on yourself as a leader.
I love that. That's awesome. This energy exam is available for all of you online. Erin even comes in and talks to your company about it, runs programs for people about it. You can even sign up for programs on your website. If you haven't had a chance to read her book, she has a favorite book of mine called You're Kind of a Big Deal. I've highlighted about every other page. The stories in it are magical. And this is what's super special that we haven't had a chance to really hit on this episode, is that Erin's banged through it. She's done the big hits, she's done the epic failures, and she wanted to do it different. And I know if you're listening to this episode, you want to be living in your sweet spot. And this book, her strategy, this test is your ticket to understanding how just to do that. So Erin, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Jen.
Oh my gosh, it's awesome.
Love your vibe.
Love it. Love it. Love it.